Alright, so this is the fifth video for personality. It's covering pages 503 to 511. It is looking at the social cognitive perspective. So this is the fourth perspective. It is going to talk about Bandora's influence. It's going to talk about what they believe is reciprocal influences. It'll talk about personal control, how much control you have in terms of making a decision, and then it'll assess and evaluate the perspective. So how do they use assessment to do this perspective, and then how would you evaluate it? So very similar to what we've done in the past. Right, so the social cognitive perspective, today's psychologists view a human using the biopsychosocial approach. So what influences somebody's personality is not just geared toward the psychoanalytical approach or the humanistic approach. Social cognitive approach is going to look at all the dynamics of the individual. The social cognitive perspective on personality was proposed by Albert Bandura. He emphasized the interaction of our traits with our situations. Bandura believed that we learn through experiencing and modeling. So we've learned about him before. So the social cognitive perspective believe we learn many of our behaviors either through conditioning or by observing others and modeling our behavior after theirs. So there's the social piece. So they believe that we learn our behavior, maybe our personality from others, and then we're prone to model it more after them. I also believe we think about our situation can impact our cognitive ability. So the way in which we think about a situation that just occurred to us can impact the way that we're actually going to display it. And they focus on how our interaction and our culture and environment all interact together. So they call this reciprocal determination. Reciprocal determination is our traits, our environment, and our behavior all interacting and influencing each other. So here's an example, your children's homework habits. It's going to look at past behaviors. What did your student do in the past? Then an influence, the internal, can be the content knowledge. Is going to influence whether or not the student may be motivated to do the assignment. And then they will influence how they will respond in class and the environment with others. So all three of these things working together. Another example that I think is probably easier to remember is the social aspect. The social aspect is your friends foster a belief that hard work will take you far. Many of you are in social environment, the household you grew up, if you work hard, it'll take you far. The behavior then is going to be your actions. If you have that mentality or your social setting, behavior then is going to be that you're going to work hard. And then you start thinking it, you think that if in thinking it will, and you believe it, then you're going to be more prone to work hard. So you have your social, then you have your thought process, and then you may be able to act a certain way. You also could have your social friends thinking that trying out for the basketball team is cool, is awesome, is excellent. So then your thought process is going to be that trying out for the basketball team is something that's motivating, I want to do it, and so then now that's going to impact you in trying out for the basketball team. Okay, so all of these things intertwine and play into one another. Okay, reciprocal determination, 3 ways you interact with your environment. Well, different people choose different environments. The school you attend, the reading you do, the TV program you watch, the music you listen to, the friends you associate with are all going to influence your environment or change your environment. You choose your environment and then it shapes you. Okay, so where you live affects how you live. Your personalities shape how you interpret and react to the event. So the situation occurs to you and then your personality or your internal thoughts are going to maybe change the way you interact to the environment. So if you're anxious people, then react to different people in different events in different ways. And then our personalities help create situations to which we react. If we have issues with trust, we may not be wish to talk to certain individuals, so then that could also shape the environment in which you live. Another topic that they talked about is personal control. How we interact with our environment is what social cognitive psychologists view is our understanding of personal control. So how we interact with our environment, how much you're willing to interact with your environment is based on the internal locus control and external locus control. Okay, so who has control in your life? Do you think that life is beyond your control, that no matter what you do, there are higher powers that will change the outcome? Or do you believe you have the ability to make yourself successful? Well, the external locus control is the perception that chance or outside forces beyond your personal control determine your fate. So you just kind of give up because no matter what you do, you're never going to be able to change it because it's beyond your control. So that thought process is going to change the way that you behave, which is going to change the way that you interact with your social setting. Internal locus control is that you believe you have the influence to change your fate. So if you work hard and you think hard and you try hard, that you're going to be able to get far in life. Right? So that's the inner thought process, that you have the ability to change your future. External locus control. External locus control, thinking that everybody has influence over you, can learn helplessness. That learned that every single time you try, you see that you fail, or then the fact that you're just going to give up and you're not going to try in the future. So we've talked about learned helplessness before. Depleting and strengthening self-control. Self-control is the ability to control your impulses. High self-control, if you have higher self-control, a lot of times you have better grades, you have social success, you're lower risk of depression. Self-control needs to be practiced. People who practice self-control through time management and study programs develop a higher sense of self-control, and you develop a self-discipline in one area of your life can strengthen your self-control. So a lot of times it's just talking about how much self-control you have. You need to practice this in order to be someone who maybe has more control and more happiness in their life. Higher self-control, they say, the higher the happiness. The less self-control, you're making impulsive decisions, you're going out and buying that car that you can't afford, okay, then you're going to live a more stressful life. Benefits of personal control. People who feel helpless and oppressed often perceive control as external and may develop learned helplessness, anxiety, stress. People in factories, schools, nursing homes who have very little control experience lower morale and increased stress. So people who do the same jobs day to day and they have no control of whether or not they're going to be of what their day entails, and no control over whether or not they think that they can be happy, and they do the same routine and are probably going to be dissatisfied. When given opportunity for control, I let you guys select the projects that you're going to work on. It may boost morale and more participation. So when there's given control to you guys in the classroom, you might be more satisfied in doing the assignment. Under conditions of personal freedom, people usually thrive. So how much control you have in your life can affect how much happiness that you have. Optimism versus pessimism. Optimism is people who have a positive outlook on life, and pessimism is somebody who has a negative outlook on life. Optimistic people usually tend to live longer, see positive in life situations. It's usually they're healthier, happier. People who see the negative in life are usually people who undergo stress, have issues with their heart, have issues with depression. Excessive optimism, too much optimism can blind us, however, from real risks. So you're constantly putting the good in people and you're not aware of the badness, that you're not aware of the aftermath of some of the actions could take. You need to have a little pessimism in your life, a little bit of questioning in your life in order to kind of make sure that you have a good balance. Assessing the behaviors and situations. So how do they assess the social cognitive perspective? Often psychologists give role-playing activities to see how people are going to react in a certain situation. So they evaluate how well one can problem solve, manage stress, maintain leadership, etc. Although time-consuming and expensive, it does predict later success. So they want to predict how well somebody can be a teacher in this stressful environment. They can give somebody a student teacher and see how well they interact with their environment, their thoughts, their social situation. Same thing in internship. They want to see how well you're going to be able to handle the business. Evaluating the social cognitive perspective, it takes into consideration the environment and the cognitive ability. It helps predict how individuals will do in certain environments. So my example of how I interacted with my student teaching experiment was going to influence whether or not I was going to be a successful teacher. Some individuals criticize that it focuses too much on external and not enough on individual abilities, so it doesn't focus too much on your individual intelligence. It focuses way too much on what the outside forces are doing. You should know this. This is recapping all the different perspectives that we've looked at so far. It's looking at the perspective, and then it's talking about what type of research method would you use for each one. Okay, so we talked about with psychodynamic and humanistic, you'd probably do a case study. For trait, you'd probably do a survey. Okay, you may want to stop this and fill it into your chart and make sure you review each one. We will not have time in class to go over each method of research. So this is kind of on your own. You need to know the benefits and the weaknesses of each one. The last part of the video is video 6, which is reading 511 to 518. It's exploring self, looking at self-esteem, your self-serving bias, and your culture and yourself. First thing it talks about is just the self. After you've taken all these different personality tests, self is the contemporary psychology assumed to be the center of personality, the organizer of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. It's who you are as a person. What they say is individuals have spotlight effect, which we overestimate others noticing and evaluating our appearance and performance and our blunders. We believe that in society, everybody is looking at us or staring at us, and what can impact how we view ourselves. People worry that others examine and judge them, and often other people are worried that other people are judging them. And they did a survey where 23% of people who thought that people were staring at them actually were able to understand or remember what they were wearing the previous day. So a lot of the times we're caring and being really particular about what we're wearing and how we look, and a lot of the times it goes unnoticed. The benefits of self-esteem, it does talk a little bit about self-esteem in this section. It states one, self-esteem of high or low is influencing your self-worth. The higher self-esteem, they had fewer sleepless nights, better emotional level, and people are usually seen as happier. Lower self-esteem, people are often seen as depressed, anxious, and unmotivated. Also, another thing they talked about is self-serving bias. Self-serving bias is a readiness to perceive oneself favorably. So a lot of the times you usually view yourself in a biased way, and you view yourself like you can be doing no wrong. So you have the defensive. People accept more responsibility for good deeds than for bad deeds, and for success than failures. So let's say let's say that you just passed your test, and your friend passed the test, and you helped your friend study. You're going to be like, oh, well, I helped that person study. I helped them, get their grade because that's something positive. They passed the test, so you want to get credit for it. But if they failed the test, you probably wouldn't be touting and saying that you helped out. Secure is another type of self-serving bias. Most people see themselves better than average. You're very secure with yourself. Most people see themselves as just better than everybody else. A big part that influences your personality is your culture. Are you an individualistic culture? Or are you a collectivist culture? In the United States, we're very individualist driven. We're given priorities to one's goals over groups, and we're defining one's identity in terms of personal attributes rather than group identifications. You're all about having your oneself succeed. Versus collectivism, they give the priority to the community, to extended family. You're more trying to help out in terms of being successful for the group versus the individual. And here again is another chart. Talks a little bit about the value contrast between individualist societies and collectivist societies. Individualist societies, something like the United States. Collectivist societies, places in Asia, that they work more for the group than individuals. Make sure you know the differences in terms of the concepts that are listed here, because this might come in handy for the test.